Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Morning, Alex.
Well, Matt, it's not a Thursday for us today when we're recording this, but we've got a really special episode. For those of our listeners who are accustomed to watching the show on video, you may notice Matt is not in his office in Syracuse recording like we usually do every Thursday morning. Matt, tell everybody a little bit about where you are right now. I'm jealous myself. I've been to your properties multiple times, but not here with you right now. I know you've got some incredible stuff going on. Just let's give people a little bit of a quick tour here and have you walk through some of the new developments we've been teasing for several weeks before we jump into today's episode.
Yeah, so thanks, Alex. We are here at Covered Bridge Campsite. I am camping in my iCamper rooftop tent. Shout out iCamper.
Yeah, we've been talking about this thing. It's sick.
Yeah. They make a good product. Got my rain fly set up because we are in the midst of some rainstorms. Actually, probably get some nasty weather tomorrow. But the reason I'm here, I'm here a lot for a lot of different reasons. But specifically, we have our Jupe glamping tents showing up on Friday. So we're just doing a little site cleanup. I'm camping in one of these sites. You see some wooden stakes in the ground here that I've marking off, kind of trying to visualize the spacing before these things get dropped on the ground. So we'll be here with the Jupe team for the next few days through the weekend. Luckily, we got some good weather on the weekend to set these up, move them around, get a feel for where exactly they're going to go. They're pretty mobile, so they're kind of temporary in nature, but really high end. Nice, high quality product that's durable. But the beauty of it is you can kind of move it wherever you want. I can test some different sites, move it from season to season, or even in the middle of the season without too much pain. So that's where I'm at. We'll certainly keep everybody posted, and honestly, I'll probably be here next week too. So maybe we'll do an episode from inside of Jupe next week.
Yeah, and I think the cool things about, the Jupes, Matt, we've talked about them again for a couple of weeks now, but for people who don't kind of remember that word's a little foreign, it was foreign to me when we first started talking about this. It's a cool product. You want to just walk people through a little bit about that as kind of a refresher. And again, as you discussed, coming sort of later in the week, this is a product that can go up pretty fast. A lot of times when we hear about projects happening at a campground or a glamping resort that are taking place, in the middle of the high season, for a lot of people that might kind of spark those alarm bells a little bit, just because of the time that it's going to take to execute this. I would say for these units, that's, I don't think, a concern. I think you're much more focused with the guest experience and getting the product right than possibly even making sure that they get set up well. So maybe just tell people a little bit about the Jupes and kind of the philosophy and how they're going to get executed here.
Right. So, it's there's a few reasons we chose Jupe. First being that, our good friend Sam Morton is part of the team there. And, any recommendation that Sam makes is as good as gold. So that was what first got us interested. But once we started digging in, we saw, it's a premium product. Very high quality. It's also very different, right?
Right.
Safari tents are cool and great. I love them, but you look around and everybody's got safari tents and everybody's got Airstreams, and there's these cool things that they work well. I'm not saying they don't work well, but I just wanted something different that, at least for now, nobody else in my area has. I'm sure that'll change sometime soon, but so they are really made for off-grid. They come solar ready. It takes two people, 2 to 4 hours to set one up. We'll see if I'm handy enough to hit that 2 hour mark. But they come in, they're boxed up in a wooden platform that's like a cabinet grade wooden platform. They're crated in that, and then that becomes the platform for the unit. So it sits on that wooden platform, and they have self-leveling feet, so you can just put it on the ground, and that's no issue. So they come with LED lights built in. They come with cabinets and end tables and a platform bed built in. And it's also the simplicity of it too, right? It's a one room sleeping tent. There's no bathroom. There's no kitchen. We will have units, and we do have units that have bathrooms and kitchens, because obviously some renters probably won't rent something that doesn't have a bathroom or a kitchen. But they're simple to operate. They're simple to clean. Not much in the way of repairs and maintenance. And they have the cool factor, right? They're kind of space age, angular, striking, design and appearance. But that being said, they also kind of just blend into the atmosphere. They blend into the environment. So, we're excited about it. We'll keep everybody posted. We're taking a kind of the first section of sites in the campground, so they're going in existing campsites,
which is always a challenge,
right? So we just moved an RV out of one of them, and we got a bunch of junk to clean out of the site. So that'll be what we're doing today and for the next couple days, to make sure we're ready. Probably gotta get a skid steer in here and grade and level some sites a little bit better than they have been. So we'll be busy. We're excited. We'll definitely share lots of content. We've got some cool marketing initiatives coming up to promote these, some influencer giveaways and different things to create some buzz. So we're excited about that.
And speaking of another brand in this space that's been pretty busy trying to do something unique, Matt, I know we wanted to take today and do a little bit of a deep dive on a company that put out some news following last week's episode. I think this came out on Friday or Saturday, late last week. And we're going to talk a little bit about Trailborn and Castle Peak Holdings, which is their own kind of investment firm and money-raising vehicle. They recently, the big news and why we're choosing to do a little bit of a deep dive into them this week. Late last week, news was announced that Castle Peak had secured $315 million, which, man, I mean, what a heck of a raise. This is over a 4-month period of time that they did this, really focused on growing their brand, Trailborn. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, the philosophy behind this, how they're operating the parks, obviously this financing news that's coming and kind of, or that's, just arrived, and now having all of this money to deploy into new properties. Matt, I just gave sort of a little bit of primer there on Trailborn. Why don't you just kind of kick off the conversation with, just how you see this news and really what this means for our space. I think they're, maybe one of, if not, the ones trying to provide kind of 3- and 4-star high-end hotel experiences, but very much focused and rooted in outdoor hospitality. And to really get all of this new funding, I think is pretty incredible.
Right. And I think I was excited to talk about this because it sheds light on the fact that, right, outdoor hospitality isn't all RV parks and campgrounds and glamping. These are traditional resort hotels in amazing locations that are outdoor focused, outdoor geared, and they really play that into the renovations that they're doing at these properties. So it's outdoor hospitality, but it's traditional hospitality as well. And I think people lose sight of the fact that there is such a crossover there, that it's, we're in the campground business, RV park business, now in the glamping business. So we talk about that a lot, but I think that's very common on social media and LinkedIn and whatever. But it's just important to note that traditional hospitality holds a significant piece of the market in outdoor hospitality. And when I say that, I mean, ski resorts, lodge style resorts near national parks, etc., which Trailborn and Castle Peak Holdings have made a name for themselves in recent years in this space. It's their second fund. Their first fund was, I think, around 100 million. They have 4 operating hotels under the Trailborn name. They have 2 listed on their website as opening soon. One in Mendocino, California, and one in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which I believe the one in Jackson Hole, Wyoming is the Snow King Resort that they purchased a couple months ago. I don't have.
Yeah, that was just back in April that they purchased that. And man, I mean, that area especially, what kind of huge barriers to entry in the sense that like how many people can you find a hotel of that quality and that size that they can really bring into their portfolio? I think that that itself is probably, they're going to look back at that as, one of their first jewels, so to speak, is a really, really, good name to put them on the map, so to speak.
Right. And I think that I read that was an $84 million acquisition, somewhere around there. So that's the size almost of their first fund and their first acquisition and the second fund. They're doing pretty deep value add on these properties. They've worked out a program, and a standard for their renovations. It's a very cool kind of striking theme to the interior of the hotels. They make outdoorsy people feel at home. I've heard some commentary that it's, if you're walking through the lobby with muddy boots or a muddy mountain bike or something, like nobody's looking at you sideways. So it's fun, it's encouraging, and I think it provides insight into some of the opportunity in the market and just allows everybody to reset and realize that, hey, this is a really huge market, right? Resort travel is usually geared towards the outdoors. You're at a beach resort, you're at a mountain resort, you're at a ski resort, what have you. They're all geared towards the outdoors. So it's exciting. I think the Marriott news that came out around the beginning of the year probably helped them in raising the second fund. It sounds like it was kind of done in conjunction or in response or in follow-up to that Marriott news, at least to some degree. Looks like they're trying to acquire 5 to 10 assets in this fund, and it sounds like it's going to take them a good few years to accomplish that. Acquiring an asset like Snow King Resort, I mean, there's only one Snow King Resort. It's not like they're buying, commodity real estate investments. So they've got to be picky. They've got to be really selective. It's not a huge field of opportunities for them. It's finding the right opportunities. And in a recent article, I enjoyed some quotes from Ben Weinberg about, the current market, that they're seeing deals, they're seeing sellers kind of come back to reality, but it's still a tough market. I would argue for them that it's always going to be a tough market, and that's probably a good thing. It's they've found their niche. It's a very specific thing. It's kind of high barrier to entry, probably some would say really high barrier to entry, which is good. It's a good moat, not a lot of people out there can buy $84 million resorts. So congrats to them.
I think the philosophy here was something that, kind of stuck out to me a little bit, in the sense as you touched on it briefly. They're choosing one asset at a time, and they've been calling out this sort of direct approach to that, of kind of not putting their, skis or cart before the horse, so to speak. They're taking their time to buy these. And I like the approach that they've taken with choosing the destinations or the types of places where they're looking to really prop these up. They talk about, kind of the secondary markets beyond the kind of major metros and all of the cities and states across the country, and really focusing on like, okay, this might be a secondary market in that state, but it's a top outdoor hospitality market, really close to a beach or a mountain or a national park or something like that. And that those being the high, drive to destinations. So rather than, competing directly with places where air travel is popular, or the traditional hotel model in a sense, which is like, how can we find great locations close to an interstate to like pull the business travelers or to pull the transient customer who's like just needs a spot for the night. Like they're taking the opposite approach and saying, we're going to get as close as possible to the destination or buy the place, like their property in Wyoming that is the destination itself, and make the people come to us as the go-to destination. I mean, Matt, I think that again, this philosophy and approach, I think really just stuck out to me. Do you think that this is sort of the right approach for them? Do you think there are sort of other markets they should be looking at? I know that's always sort of a interesting topic of discussion is like, what's the next hot market, especially in outdoor hospitality?
It's a good question. I mean, what jumped out at me and kind of doing some analysis of Trailborn over the last, 6 months or so since the Marriott news came out, they're focused in kind of a mid-scale, mid-range price point. I haven't done much analysis on Snow King. I don't know what their ADRs are like. I'll have to look into that to see if this kind of changes or departs from that strategy. And I'm kicking myself because I was down in Wrightsville Beach recently, and it just didn't occur to me that they had a place in Wrightsville Beach.
I think another one of those like secondary destination, but great outdoor hospitality market, a place where like you kind of on paper look at that and be like, Wrightsville Beach, like how would a company of like this size with this much capital, why would they choose there as their destination? But I think if you look at their philosophy and kind of work backwards, I think it makes a ton of sense as to why they have a property there.
Right. Yeah. Awesome, fun location, and I totally would have stayed there. It just didn't occur to me at the time of booking my accommodations, but that was actually for the Live Oak Bank Symposium that was back in April, and it came up in conversation that a few of the attendees were actually staying there, so got to chat with them, and they said it was nice. It was they bought kind of a tired hotel, but a notable location, right? I mean, any location on Wrightsville Beach is awesome, and they've been renovating it, and it's been working out well for them, and it was really good feedback from the attendees. So I think
another interesting part of this, Matt, just to segue a little bit here, is to kind of dive into not exactly how they operated, but just some of the differences that we're seeing in the way that they've kind of, as you said, moved from maybe smaller acquisitions to obviously getting larger as the fund size increases. But I think the way in which they've talked about how they've built these locations and what they've added to it has been interesting to me. In the way that they highlight, look, we've picked these locations, we picked these markets, we now have a great real estate play here. Now we're really looking at like, what are we doing operationally to bring the things into this market that are missing from that market, and how that is not exactly a standardized thing across the portfolio. That this is something that the experience in Wrightsville Beach might be completely different, or probably should be, as when you look at the experience in Wyoming, right? The activities that are happening, the theming of the hotel itself, even just the offerings that are available are going to be different. And I think that is interesting in the sense that you look at, a lot of the top flags and having especially Marriott kind of pull them in, and Marriott kind of being okay with the uniqueness and the boutique nature of these outdoor hospitality properties, I think is interesting. So much we just see the flags, it's so standardized, the experience is so similar, where here it's not exactly apples to apples as you compare it. And I think that's a smart approach.
Agreed. I think it's really smart. I think it's right. It's something that's really a pillar of outdoor hospitality, is becoming kind of one with the location and accentuating the location.
Campgrounds are famous for this. This is not something new, but on the hotel side, I would say this is fairly new. You only see the independent people with a cool philosophy like a Trailborn sort of implementing this. The commonplace names of a Hilton, a Marriott, whoever, they're all going to be very, very similar experience.
Right. And I think they will, right? Part of the reason of scaling a brand like this is for the network effect to get customers, becoming customers of multiple locations. And I think it's an interesting kind of path. And I believe they are branding it the right way. Been very impressed with their branding. Their website's awesome. It's just like a very kind of cool brand. I think they'll be able to.
They kind of feel all together, but they have that unique
right, and that's
with each location.
Right, so you might get somebody that stumbles across the Wrightsville Beach location because they're looking, it just meets their needs for Wrightsville Beach, and then they come across Trailborn, and then they're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to go to Jackson Hole," and then they're on their radar for next year's trip, and then they win some loyalty with a customer there. It seems like they're very focused on like kind of the communal vibes, the rooftop deck, the fire pits, fostering connection. Like I've heard their bars are just always very, very cool and centerpiece of the hotel and the experience. And, it fosters that community, that connection, and just good vibes. And it seems very well thought out. I don't want to say feel like calculated is a bad, if it's like, it's well thought out and strategic, but also organic and natural and authentic, which is what hospitality is all about, giving people a great experience. So,
and I think to that point, Matt, on the experiences, like this has been a part of, I think their efforts that also has been really interesting is adding those type of, the experiential nature to this. Obviously, we talked about last week with Airbnb launching services on their side of things. And we see Trailborn, adding this as well, on Wrights Beach. It's like, hey, why don't we do like surfing lessons and like really incorporate the water? Like, let's use our location to our advantage. And I think that that's really smart. I think those are, as they've, I've also, as we're both been reading articles to prep for the show, you hear about the memory making parts of this is, their co-CEO and management team have talked about, and how, it's not always the room that you're paying for that's driving the memories at these properties. It could be that surfing lesson or, that experience that's the thing that you're going to remember from your time there. And I think that that's really smart because that allows them to keep the hotel price, what it is, and derive the revenue, as you talked about, through the bars and the restaurants and the experiences, and just create this really dynamic, cool setup.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, they've got certainly got, there had some challenges cut out for them. It seems like they're crushing it so far, but deep renovations, obviously the debt markets are challenging, construction costs and development costs, a lot of volatility there. But from what I've seen, I've had a little bit of interaction with the team, and they've been hiring like crazy. They've been, they have a rock star team that is built out really well. They've got a, really capable development team. They handle a lot of that stuff internally. And it seems like they're well built for the challenges. And again, that goes back to, if it was easy to do, everybody would do it. I think they're comfortable doing the challenging things, and the investment market seems to agree. Right? They raised $100 million fund, and relatively shortly thereafter, tripled the size of that, and they're off to the races. They've got an awesome partnership with Marriott, and kudos to them. Should be fun to watch and study them as they execute this business plan.
And Matt, as we wrap up here, if you had that crystal ball, or you were sitting in that CEO chair, you kind of talked about the challenges in the roadmap ahead. Do you think that there's a risk of somebody else, right? Hilton finding that person to back to add to their network to compete head on with a Trailborn and start to execute a strategy similar to this? Is there somebody else out there who, could become a real competitor for Trailborn in a real way?
Right.
Kind of what else, might be looming here on the horizon for them?
Yeah, really interesting question. I would say, other than the way they're branding and marketing this and creating this network, like what they're doing is, and I'm a huge fan of what they're doing, but I would say, right, like it's nothing new, right? Like a hotel on Wrightsville Beach, they bought an older hotel that, has been there. They're reinventing it. They're putting a new spin on it, which is awesome. They bought a kind of iconic snow resort, so they're not completely reinventing the wheel. I think they're putting a modern spin on something that's always worked, and trying to achieve that network effect, which I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is can they scale enough, right? They're sinking a ton of capital into acquisitions and development and building an awesome team. So I don't know where that kind of tipping point is of becoming profitable, and at what scale does having a big robust corporate team make sense. I don't know. I'm not that smart, but I don't have concerns, right? If somebody else jumps in, that's should be encouraging that the model is attractive to different groups and different sets of investors and different capital. I'd almost be more concerned if nobody else jumped in for them, at least. Right? It's a big ocean. It's a big pie. Everybody can get a piece of it, and so it doesn't really cross my mind as a threat for them, right? That's confirmation of the thesis, confirmation of the opportunity, if anything.
Right. And I would say, on that point, as we see the big names like a Hilton or a Marriott, and how many either brand partnerships or just sort of, other opportunities that have come up in the last several years where traditional hospitality players are recognizing the opportunity in outdoor hospitality and putting capital and marketing and firepower behind it. I think that does only speak to the continued success and at least, investment into the space for the long term. So really exciting to get to talk about Trailborn today. Hopefully this was a really kind of interesting, cool deep dive for those of you out there. There's a number of other players that I'm sure Matt will get the chance to talk about more over the coming weeks and months, but thought that this was a really timely opportunity with the news that came out last week to talk a little bit about their model, really just congratulate them on the money that they raised and get a chance to dive into their business model today. So with that, Matt, we'll let you get back to truck camping and picking out these Jupe locations. And I'm sure, if you're back at Covered Bridge next week, would love to do a bit of a deep dive into these units. I think that's something that people would love to see. I think that would be some really great content as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
All right. And for those of you who are regular listeners, make sure to, if you missed any episodes earlier in the week on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, we've got, of course, our GMH crew, GMH Europe, and then our GMH hotel crew right before us every week. Make sure to give everybody some love. We've all got some great shows and great content putting out there. So that's your reminder to do that. And Matt and I will catch you back here next week on Thursday, hopefully live next week for another great episode. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you soon.